the 13 days after we awoke were the beginning of the end.
Hello everyone and welcome to Final Fantasy XIII. I am really excited to be returning to this game and to also hopefully share the whole playthrough and maybe a playthrough of the entire series with you guys. It's a big game. It's going to take a long time, but I came to the decision. I was really in the mood to start playing it again, and I don't know, I see so much discourse about this game all the time online, and I really wanted to share my opinions because it's a game that I really do adore, and it was my introduction to the Final Fantasy series, and yeah, I just really wanted to return to it again.
Serious?
Be quiet.
Yes, I'm serious, sus. I'm going to do my best to talk around the plot points in the cutscene here. It's hard at the start here to find some good points to talk when there's not much going on, but at least while Lightning's being a badass here, it'll give us time to sort of talk about what's going on. So these first two episodes I've already recorded the gameplay for, and I'm going to be doing post-commentary. From episode 3 onwards, I'm going to try live commentary, at least for a while, because I think it's going to work better with the game as a whole.
I'm out of the sea.
He said, "Lassie." If anyone wants to try the Final Fantasy drinking game, drink every time they say a weird term.
So far, so good. They all want to fight.
Good for them.
So here we are introduced to two of our main cast. We'll be meeting another 3 of them later, and then eventually the final one quite a while from now. Oh, that's a great shot. Really is a really strong opener. This one's probably one of my favourite, not only Final Fantasy openings, but game openings. It doesn't work about, sets up the world really well, straight into the action. No, stereotypical kid in a village plots, discovering he's the chosen one, anything like that. Just a bunch of people in a bad situation. Things are blowing up. It's fun. It's great. This game is very good at setting the stakes for what's to come. I mean, we're starting off here. We're already clearly in a bad situation. There's people getting shot. There's things exploding. There's portals and creepy mechanical animal things jumping out everywhere. And here comes our first enemy encounter of the game. I really love the sort of Geiger-esque biomechanical animal design of a lot of these enemies. Very cool. Here we got a sort of like scorpion thing. It's very unique. It's not like, we don't start the game off fighting slime or mouse or, And now we're into the gameplay. Yeah, it's funny, I remember being blown away the first time I played this by how seamless the transitions between CGI and gameplay were. I don't know if it was just a lower resolution on the PlayStation or just time, but yeah, they're not quite as seamless as I remember them being. Still a good looking game. The frame rate chugs a couple of spots in this video. I think it's an encoding error with OBS, because I seem to have fixed it for the next video. I got it up to 60 frames per second, but for some reason it's a little chuggy in this one, so I do apologise for that. I'm impressed that OBS can handle it at all, to be honest. And here we get our first little taste of the combat system, and I know that this is one that is complained about a lot, that, mash X to win. And yes, these early fights, you really only have attack as an option, so, you may as well pick the auto battle option and let the game, play itself a little bit. But, I mean, honestly, is that really any different to any other RPG at this level? I mean, I've just been playing through Dragon Quest XI, and it has the exact same issue that you start the game off with literally one attack skill, one character, and all you can do is wait for your turn, press attack, wait for your turn, press attack. It's not like RPGs or Final Fantasy even has ever really had that interesting a combat system. It wasn't really until, I guess, Final Fantasy XV trying to add in the more action style, that it was even remotely more interesting. So I'm certainly not defending, especially the early battles in this game, but I mean, it seems really unfair to pick on this game for having, you know, uninteresting combat when, you know, show me a JRPG that has even vaguely interesting combat that's not an action-based one.
Heads up.
Not to knock on turn-based combat. I mean, active time battle, all of that. It's fine, but it's, you know, not exactly the most gripping thing in the world. But once Final Fantasy's combat system gets going, it really opens up, and we'll see that from about the third episode onwards, where our options start opening up a lot more, and it gets a lot more interesting. And here in this first sort of pseudo boss battle thing, it's really just teaching you about balancing between attacking and healing. This game does a lot of good things with healing. I like that potions are used for your whole party, so you're not wasting turns, you know, healing up one guy and then healing up the next guy and then healing up that. You know, it's fun. And you also get a free heal at the end of each battle, which is just great, because there's nothing more frustrating than just, you know, you take damage in these games. There's no way to block, there's no way to dodge. It's just you take damage, enemy takes damage, and you try to damage them more than they damage you. You know, that's really how these games work. So it's always annoyed me, especially with the older ones, that, you know, you were forced to have to heal up after every single battle, and, you know, it just turns into hoarding a bunch of resources and then spending them after each battle. That this series, it does really well with the post-battle heals, I think. I don't know if anyone else has a problem with that, but I think it's a good thing. Makes it more fun. Means that you can really experiment and have fun in the battles, and even if you end up with only 1 HP left, then you know you're going to get the heal, so you can be a bit more braver, you can be a bit more aggressive.
Oh, goodness. Ooh. We did it.
I love these two. They're great characters to start off on. Obviously, Lightning, fantastic character. And Saz is just he's a breath of fresh air. He's good. He's fun.
Aren't you supposed to protect civilians, soldier? I mean, you are Sanctum, aren't you? What are you doing trying to stop the Purge? Why don't you tell me that?
I was a soldier.
Hey,
It's funny, after playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, that line has a bit of a different weight to it. Don't know if it's a deliberate reference, but it's interesting nonetheless.
Chocobo, we just can't catch a break, can we? Yeah, that's a good question.
It's interesting the flack that Lightning catches as a character. We'll talk more about the characters and story as we go along, but, you know, she's in a bad way. She's clearly in a bad situation. She's trying to make the best of it, and, you know, yeah, she gets a bit bummed out and frustrated, but look at her. She's got this amateur sort of dragging along with her, complaining along the way. She just wants to, you know, go do her job, kick some butt, do what she needs to do. As much as I love Saz, you know, he basically just gets in the way of things, especially early on here. I mean, she goes through a lot of development very quickly, and I often think people who complain about her character didn't really play much beyond the sort of opening few hours.
It's a mess is what this is.
I mean, she goes through so much development that people often end up thinking that she's the actual main character of the series, even though she's technically not, at least in this game, the main character. Or technically in the second game either. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. I start to edit out a few of the battles a little bit later, just because a lot of these early battles are kind of just the same thing until the combat system opens up. There's some room for experimentation. You can do things like, the game doesn't really teach you about this, but if you come back as someone who understands how the combat system works, you can do things like delaying your attacks, and triggering them early and things like that, and sort of deciding when you want to use your area of effect attacks. But you know, honestly, your best bet is just to auto-battle through this part of the game. It's this kind of a lose-lose situation. I mean, they put this gameplay in there so you've at least got something to do in the meantime. But it is very simple gameplay. It's very, very linear. You basically run down the hallway, fight a few guys, run down the hallway, fight a few guys. It's basically padding in between the story here. But, I mean, if they hadn't put this little bit of gameplay in, the game would have opened up with a almost 4-hour-long cutscene. So, I mean, I don't necessarily know if either of those situations is right. I mean, Kojima's often have to open his games up with a 3 to 4 hour long cutscene, and that'd work. Maybe it would have worked with this one. But again, I've seen less gameplay in games within this series. It's not like we're trudging through the sewers. As much as I love Final Fantasy XII, I mean, the opening of that game is just walking through the sewers, fighting rats, walking through the sewers, fighting rats, walking around the town, doing nothing, triggering cutscenes. It's not an exclusive issue to Final Fantasy XIII, is my point. A lot of these games, whether they're JRPGs or just RPGs in general, suffer from sort of linear story point sort of issue. Or uninteresting battles bookended between cutscenes. It always seems to bug me that Final Fantasy XIII gets called out for that specifically over other ones.
Not wanting to get purged, I get. But taking on trained soldiers?
Better to die than get sent to Pulse. It's hell for the brimstone.
Here's our first mention of Pulse. We're hearing a lot more about that.
Hell's not sounding too bad, because this place ain't exactly paradise.
Domesticated peacekeepers. Nothing to worry about.
Maybe not for a soldier girl, but I'm trying to say, hey! We, gotta fight again, huh?
Here's our first introduction to the sort of biomechanical animal soldiers, Pantherons. It's interesting that these enemies are sort of revisited later, much later. We'll sort of deal with that later, but there's some interesting plot stuff with these mechanical creatures and sort of where they came from and what they represent. But they do have a decent variety of enemies to fight, even this early on. I mean, you've got the different types of soldiers, you've got a few of these different little biomechanical animals. It's not, again, not to harp on, but we're not starting off with rats and bats and mice and anything like that. And I know not every Final Fantasy game starts with that issue, but there's plenty of good games that do. And I just walked straight past an item. It's funny for as linear as the game is, one little spot off to the right there, and somehow I managed to miss it. No, I can't even make the excuse that I was doing commentary and missed it. I was playing perfectly normally. Now, this fight is actually a little bit of an important one. Not that the game really sort of explicitly tells you, but it teaches you here about prioritizing your targets. See, these air guys, and you're going to encounter them a lot in the game, they have this missile burst attack, which you just saw there. It causes a bunch of knockback and strips off a bunch of health, so it's really important to try to focus on those guys first, take them out before you focus on anyone else. You see there, it basically took almost 2/3 of Salza's health off. So if you're paying attention, even these very basic early game fights do actually teach you some important things. Now, apparently I was distracted here. I wonder if someone came in and talked to me. That might have been why I missed the thing, because I'm sort of lingering on the pause screens here for a minute. I must have, someone must have come in to talk to me here. That's the excuse I'm going with for why I missed the really obvious item placement. Then I'm sticking with it. So I filmed this 2 days ago now, so trying to remember exactly what was going on in my head was a bit of a pain. I really don't like post-commentary. I really don't. But I wasn't able to set up for live comm at the time, so we do what we can do. As, you know, uninteresting as the whole sort of walk down a hallway is, the visuals are fantastic here. The game does hold up really, really well, not just graphically, but from the art design as well. It is really impressive. The amount of colour in the ground textures and the lighting in the background is not... Even the Final Fantasy remake actually kind of suffered for this, that a lot of their urban areas don't have a lot of colour and interest to them. As good looking as that game is, and it is a really good looking game, like even the road textures here, you got like hints of green and blue, you got the yellow lights against the white lights, and there's a lot of variation. It's certainly not a brown or grey game.
Preemptive strike.
God, I love this scene. Welcome to what you'll be doing all the game. Preemptive strike. Oh no, they saw me. Preemptive strike. Oh no, they saw me. I'm glad that the game actually takes time to acknowledge and reference that within a cutscene. The preemptive strike system works a lot better in the next games. In Final Fantasy II and Lightning Returns, they worked out a much better way of making the preemptive strikes work. But there are a lot of times in this game where you'll swear you've got the drop on someone, and then right at the last second they'll just spin around. Apologies too if you notice any weird sort of jerky movements. My controller was not working for some reason, so I had to play with mouse and keyboard. And it's serviceable, but it's certainly not the best way to play this game. You got to admire the stakes. They certainly don't muck about with the stakes. Wonder if this has one of the highest body counts of a Final Fantasy opening. And here's Stars once again being a total pain in the ass.
Let go!
Hell no, you're my only way out of here!
I mean, you understand, but poor Lightning's just out here trying to do her business. She did not ask for this amateur to be following her around.
Hey, that might get us across. Right there.
But lucky for him, they got a convenient solution to our problem.
Right?
Looks that way.
Look on Lightning's face there. There's some really, really good acting, like not just voice acting, but animation acting in this game. Really good little subtle stuff.
All right, you leave this to me.
See, right here. Yep, I went to sneak around them there. No luck. I mean, obviously, it's implied that you're not really meant to get around them there. They are blocking the thing, but you'll notice more later. There's times I got to sneak around someone, and I really should have snuck past them, but yeah. Hey, look, it's not a stealth game. Like I said, they much improve the system in later games. No, it's a small annoyance. So there are times where the auto battle just isn't the best option. You notice there that even after staggering that guy, and we'll talk more about the stagger system soon, but I really wanted to just attack him, but the auto battle was trying to force me into an area of effect attack that wasn't needed. I also do things here like cancelling attacks. You notice before I just did one attack. That's a thing you can do that the game never really overtly teaches you about, but you don't have to queue all your attacks at once. You can just trigger one of them off if that's what you do. Stars, get out of the way. You can just trigger one of them off or two of them off or however many you need if you need it, which not only saves you some ATB gauge, but, you know, saves you from potentially wasting shots. I don't know if the game ever explicitly teaches you how to do that. I can't remember if I read it in a guide or watched it in a video or something, but it does actually, especially later on, it does help spruce up the combat system a bit more.
Not our lucky day.
Now we have our second little mini-boss for the game. Ugh, I love these little guys. They're really cool. Ridiculous trench coat armor thing.
Turn ugly?
He wants to kill us without a fight.
The Warframe's Tennos seem to draw a lot of influence from this. Regardless, very cool. Check them out. Maybe inbuilt six-pack armor. And yeah, here we go. So this is, I'm obviously skipping the tutorials, but this basically just teaches you about the chaining, or the stagger system as it becomes known eventually. So the idea is as enemies take damage, specifically damage that they're weak to, later on once we start unlocking magic and things like that, it'll build up their stagger gauge. When it's full, they stagger. When they're in a staggered state, they take extra damage. They can often be opened up to additional debuffs or additional weaknesses. And later on, you can get skills that take advantage of it, like you can make your character launch them into the air or knock them down or all sorts of things. So the real strategy of these games is in building up stagger, staggering the opponents, and then taking advantage of the weaknesses that open up. And you can't do it much this early on. A few of these mini-bosses will let you do it, but yeah, like I said, later on once you start unlocking the magic and things like that, it really becomes the focus of the game, and it's quite engaging. Even in the more sort of turn-based form, to focus on not just using what an enemy is weak to, but using it in a way to create the stagger state and then take advantage of their new weaknesses. I gotta shush for a bit, this is important.
What? Classified military info? Huh? What's the matter? You quit, didn't you? You think I'm gonna go out there and just tell everybody your secrets?
My angle. I'm after the Fal'Cie.
That weight in the air at the mention of that word.
Still happy you tagged along.
And yeah, we might not know what a Fal'Cie is yet, but I mean, it's pretty clear whatever it is, it's not a good thing.
Didn't have a choice.
I know people give the game crap for the made-up words, but I mean, I don't know. I understood them pretty well. I think the game explains it really well, and whether you know what a Fal'Cie is or not, that reaction just sells. It's not a good thing.
Cocoon citizens, I would like to thank our brave Pulse pioneers and express our best wishes for a successful relocation.
And here's the voice of our main antagonist for the first time.
Sacrifice ensures the continued
Dripping in irony.
of our society.
Safety and peace.
For this remarkable gesture, every resident of Cocoon, your family, your friends, your neighbors, would be exposed to the dangers of the world below.
It's actually kind of scary how relevant some of these themes of this game is, even now.
Migration. More like extermination.
Huge. You stay here.
So sorry. I didn't mean to.
These people need heroes. Here. You keep your cool, and they will too.
Here's Mr.
Got it.
Hero himself.
Got it.
What's our motto?
The army's no match for Nora.
That a boy.
It's funny how they introduce the three least liked characters all within this one scene here. I wonder if that's a consequence for why they're not liked. And look, I'm not about to sing Snow's defenses. I mean, the game very clearly makes it clear that, that's a great sentence. It never takes his side. Within 20 minutes, we're going to see exactly how much it doesn't take his side here. He is arrogant, and his mistakes and actions have devastating consequences that are felt pretty much throughout the whole game and the next game, and even parts of the third game too. So, you know, I think he is an interesting character for how he is portrayed and how the game wants us to think about him. I mean, not every character has to be likable. And as for the other two, we'll talk about them when we get to them. Now, I've edited out pretty much all of Snow's fights just because they're not particularly engaging. It's just more of the same thing. So you'll see when they pop up. I've just edited them out.
Crazy.
Then take a nap.
Really? Can I?
I do really like the Nora guys, though.
Dirt nap. You can save them all.
Oh, that's even worse.
I'm glad they came back in the second game a little bit more because they're really underutilized
We're
here.
all in this together.
They work really well
Our
off Snow.
enemy's the Cocoon Sanctum. Their dreaded SciComm, no less.
What's the dread? SciComm's nothing but a whole bunch of bluster and bullying. They've got nothing on Nora.
Well, we are the heroes after all.
Let's prove it.
Yeah.
A lot of punching later. Yeah, like a lot of punching. There was almost 10 minutes of footage.
No more. There are soldiers everywhere.
Yo, boss. What's the plan?
Charge in, guns blazing.
Hey, that's not a plan.
Real heroes don't need plans.
To be fair, when you're built like a brick house and you can punch guys to death, you probably don't need a plan. Case in point. Apparently Snowskin is immune to bullets.
all okay? Hey, careful with those. Don't worry. No one's moving to Pulse today. We'll clear you a path out of here, so be ready to...
Wait! Let me fight with you!
You can't expect us to just sit here.
Could help.
Yep.
This is an interesting point here that's worth remembering. And even the game kind of forgets this. Well, I mean, it doesn't forget this, but
Volunteers front and center.
it's focusing on another aspect of this, is that Snow doesn't actually force these people to fight. They do volunteer. I mean, yes, he certainly doesn't deter them, and yes, he is very much responsible for what happens in a lot of ways. But it's made very clear that this situation was set up a certain way regardless. And these people do volunteer, so
Hold it steady. Yeah, feels good. Yeah.
it
Can you show me again?
yeah, it's very morally grey. Even this little hesitation here on his face.
You sure?
Yeah. Moms are tough.
Mums are tough.
Right.
It's the last one, boss.
All right, last one. Somebody take it.
This is stupid though. Yes, no, just shove the gun in a kid's face. And this is even stupider. Oh, sure, little girl. Here, take this gun.
Push comes to shove. Keep him safe.
First impression of Snow? All talk.
Big
All
burn
right,
coming in
lay
there from
low
Vanille.
and you'll be fine. We'll clear out the area.
Just in case there was any doubt, because even the game seems to forget sometimes.
Together.
And resounding crickets.
Come on, everybody
That
up.
girl with the pink hair, the one who took the gun, that's Vanille. She is actually the main character of this game. She is the one who narrates all the cutscenes, and she's kind of the heart that keeps everyone together. She's also apparently the most hated character in the game, but again, we'll talk about that stuff as we come up on it.
Time to go, kiddo.
Lots of foreshadowing. So, like I said, I mean, these cutscenes are really well done. And cut out about another 15-20 minutes worth of fighting there. Yeah, same thing. Kept this bit in though. Had to keep the mini boss, even though the fight itself isn't particularly interesting. This is the first introduction of these behemoths, and they are very cool. This guy's like the least cool of them, and he's very cool. Again, with these Geiger monsters, it's like almost... But I don't want to say Lovecraftian, because it's not really Lovecraftian, but it is... Hey, listen to that sound. It's so cool.
We fight and we survive.
Yeah, these three guys, and especially in this fight here, is in a way a little teaser for how combat's going to work later in the game, in that you have sort of Snow as your main damage dealer, you've got Godot here as the DPS guy, and then you've got LeBro who sort of alternates between, you know, light damage and healing, which is usually how you're going to have your team set up moving forward. So it's cool that way. I do like, even though the fighting itself isn't particularly interesting, because obviously you don't have your magic yet, you don't really have any stagger capability or anything, it at least gives you a little teaser for how you'll probably see LeBro doing some healing there. So it gives you, like, if you're paying attention, it's a nice little subtle way of hinting at how combat's going to work down the line. And I get very lucky in this fight here that I managed to just knock him out right before he's about to do his big attack that can potentially one-shot you before. I've had it one-shot me on normal difficulty before, so that was quite lucky. Anyway, I got to shush up again for a bit because this is a really important scene here.
No kidding. Stay down.
told you, didn't I? Moms are tough.
Like I said, they do not mess about with the stakes in this game. And that is immediate karmic retribution there for Snow's actions. I mean, yes, he's not solely responsible, but yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Get him home, please.
Hold on!
I don't know if that's a deliberate Lion King reference. Sorry, I shouldn't. That's very serious. I shouldn't be making jokes. But I don't know. Always makes me think of the zoom on Lion King. It's almost shot for shot identical. And here's Vanille stepping up here into the mum role immediately.
We have to move.
Right.
She is pretty much, so far, the only wholly unselfishly motivated character. Well, at least from our perspective, she does have her motivations, and we get into them later. But everyone else is out for themselves or only helping people because, you know, they've got similar goals. But Vanille very much is a different perspective to everyone else in this game.
It's an out-and-out massacre. Those people won't even live long enough to die on Pulse.
That was the idea.
What?
Sanctum logic. They conjured up the Purge to eliminate a threat. I mean, why carry the danger all the way to Pulse? Why not just stamp it out here? Execution masquerading as exile. That's all the Purge ever was.
Relocation to Pulse. How does the government get away with pulling crap like that? And you knew this was gonna happen?
The Purge was PSICOM. Private Sanctum troops, not the Guardian Corps.
PSICOM, Guardian Corps. Soldiers are soldiers, aren't they? Pulse File C and their lessee are enemies of the state. Tell a soldier to kill an enemy, and you really think it's gonna matter what uniform he's wearing?
Might have mattered to that one. Couldn't shoot. Got himself shot instead.
How about you?
Good
Wanna say
hint.
shoot, you pull the trigger?
Good hint here at some of the weight that Lightning's carrying.
Fine. Forget I asked.
Another really well acted scene, this one.
Wait. What?
And these guys are really cool. Really like the design of them. There's another enemy that's more interesting to fight down the line. They have a lot of interesting attacks. They sort of usually predominantly focus on one character over all the others. And they're very strong, so you usually have to try to stagger them really quickly while distracting them. And yeah, plus their design's really cool. It's like a four-legged soldier guy, robot thing. I don't know. I love the aesthetic of this game. I love the creature designs, the enemy designs, the locations, the characters. It's really, really strong art direction throughout. And I think it does this sort of modern fantasy style more interesting than any of the other Final Fantasy games. Yes, even Final Fantasy VII. Having literally just played the remake, I kind of find this world a little bit more
What's that?
visually and lore interesting. I don't know, just all this metal and rock and yeah. I mean, look at the vestige. It's like, what even is it? Here's where the sort of Lovecraftian thing comes in. That's not just the green. It's just like this completely, and when we finally get to see some of the foul seas, it's just this completely ununderstandable alien, bizarre creations.
Just what you were looking for.
Final Fantasy's
Yeah.
always been really good at that.
Right in there.
The post-file C.
And everyone and everything starts coming together.
Don't worry. We'll be okay.
Yeah, there she is. I really like Vanille. I always have. I know people get annoyed by her voice, but, you know, I think her actress did a fantastic job. They asked her to try to replicate the Japanese one, and she did the best she could.
It's too much, isn't it?
And she's so sweet and caring and
Face it later.
unique.
Ciao!
Hey, wait!
And you know, once it gets into why,
You said it made you happy when I smiled, didn't you? But really, I was afraid. I was always afraid.
she's definitely probably, she is probably one of the most interesting characters in this game. And this is a game with a lot of interesting characters in it, so that's really saying something.
So, how do you figure that post-file C is different from the Sanctum?
And don't get me wrong, I love Lightning, especially in the later games, and the journey that she goes through here, but Vanille gets a lot of crap, and she doesn't deserve any of it.
Time to jump.
Yeah. Hey, hey! Hey! Hang on! What the? Hey! Damn. She can do it, so can we.
I don't really know what Saz was thinking there with the climbing down. Well, not really anything to climb onto. Probably would have been better just jumping. Although, don't get me wrong, I would have been far too terrified in that situation, so... Who am I to judge?
Come on, come on!
What about the others? They didn't die. They couldn't have died.
Of course not.
It is good that they let this sink in here. At least a bit. At least for the
Hey,
audience.
get a grip, man. What's wrong with you?
You're surrounded by dead bodies that he is almost solely responsible for.
Get him home. Get who home?
And that was Lightning and Saz's ride there. Nice little reference in the
Toss me
background.
that.
Godot is a bit oblivious here. This scene does annoy me a bit.
What are you doing?
So what are you afraid of, huh? You're supposed to be the hero.
You are standing on a pile of corpses right now, guys. Is this really the best time to be talking about this stuff?
Isn't it about time you picked her up?
Don't mind all these dead people. Your wife is waiting.
Yeah.
And conveniently, here comes a ride there. No, everything's coming up Millhouse. Sorry, I shouldn't be joking, but this is one particular scene that's always bugged me a bit.
Now you're talking.
We just killed lots of people.
Oh, could they?
Oh, now we're sad again. How could they? Oh, I don't know what I feel.
I hope everyone's all right.
I'm sure they're not all right. You're literally standing on top of the corpses. No.
Standing there ain't gonna stop us.
Anyway, harping on the point now. Yeah, see, there I could have... the game doesn't tell you this, and I totally forgot until about halfway through the next part, but you don't actually have to fight any of the enemies at the start here. If you can somehow manage to avoid them, they're not worth any XP, or some of them drop a bit of... I think they drop like potions or things like that, but if you're not fighting, you don't need the potions. And there's a few times where I run past an enemy only to turn around and go back and fight it, and it's just really pointless. Once you pass the point that you start unlocking that, and there's that bloody missile burst. These guys are never not annoying to fight. They're especially annoying now because you can't really do anything apart from taking the hits. But yes, there's a few points where I sort of run past enemies and then go back and fight them, and yeah. Until you unlock the magic and stuff, it's very obvious when it happens when you start getting XP and leveling up. There is literally no point fighting if you can avoid it. It's just a time waster. I mean, the game often doesn't let you avoid it, but there are a few times, and especially in the next part when things open up a little bit more, there's quite a few times where I unnecessarily seek out enemies, and I do not realize until almost at the point where I do actually have to fight things that I should have been avoiding them. The cool little teachable moment here. This is really cool. I like this bit. So you can hear the treasure chests even if you can't see them. They don't show up on the map. And you can hear it directionally as well. So it's a really good moment there. You can't see the chest. You can easily run past it, but because you can hear it, you can sort of seek it out that way. And that's really relevant, especially in the later half of the game. So that's cool. That's a cool little moment.
All right, on my go.
Right.
Go!
And with this is actually going to be our last encounter for this part. It's all cutscene from here on out. And yes, I realise that's probably, what, about 10 minutes or so worth of cutscenes, but they are important cutscenes. And there's plenty more fighting to be had in the next part. So I really, I hope you've enjoyed watching this. I know this is a little slow at the start. I've tried to find interesting things to talk about, and I struggle a bit more with the post-commentary. This will all get a bit more exciting with the upcoming parts and as things start taking off. But let's just get through these first two bits together, and then we'll be able to meet each other for the live commentary in the third part. I'm still going to talk a little bit during these last couple of cutscenes here, but we're pretty much done. As Snow's very awesome theme kicks in the background. I will say I hate that the audio mix is so low with the music in the PC version.
You don't know who you've got to save. You just protect them all, right?
Because I think that's the one thing about this game that everyone can agree on, is that the music is absolutely fantastic. Flawless. Flawless soundtrack.
Hero.
Yeah.
Actually learnt most of them on piano. Lightning's theme, Vanille's theme. I've got a cover of Lightning's theme on the channel, I think, unless I got rid of it. Pretty sure it's still up there. Very cool piece of music. You would have been hearing it in the fights. They play it a lot. Da, 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 da. I know what it is with modern Final Fantasies and motorbikes. I realise those are like flying bikes, but still.
Don't shoot.
Snow!
And everyone's okay. Well, these everyone's are okay. The other everyone's
Since
were
when do
okay.
you care about kids?
Favor for a friend.
That's a really bad mark against Snow's character there. Like, I realise it's probably a playful joke, but since when do you care about kids is probably not something you should be saying about a supposed hero.
I think I'm done.
You're done when we are.
Ow, what?
That's the
Dramatic silence.
Didn't you have something to tell him?
Yeah,
All right then.
but I...
Vanille
I'll go with you.
basically acting like Jiminy Cricket over here for Hope.
You have no idea what it was like. Oh,
Everyone safe?
the army's no match for Nora.
I meant the kids.
All accounted for.
Okay. Let's keep it that way, all right? I'll swing by the vestige. Keep the kids out of trouble.
You got it. Say hi to the missus for me. You go skirt chasing, I take care of the kids. Some husband.
Dinner's on me.
Better be home cooking.
When's the wedding, lover boy?
Well, don't worry, none of you are invited.
We're still going.
Hey, you serious? What about me?
What about you? What about all the dead people?
Catch you later.
Got over that very quickly. I could really understand Hope's frustration here. But really must cut. The poor kid. So watch this go all but kill his mother, and then here he is. Shows back up, perfectly fine, laughing and joking away. Very justifiable what Hope goes through. As much as I know it annoys people. People complain about it so much. Oh, Hope's a whiny kid. I mean, the kid's mother dies protecting some Chad idiot who just shows up 2 minutes later, laughing and joking away. I'd be pretty pissed off too. This poor kid's clearly had a very sheltered life.
It's just that...
He immediately starts clinging onto Vanille instead.
Say, you know how to fly this?
Yeah, I think
She
so.
does her best to keep him distracted. Maybe not always for the best.
That way.
But definitely not for the best. Very, very definitely not for the best, but she's trying.
If we go in there, that thing could... It could make us Lassie.
And again, the very heavy shadowing,
I don't think I can...
You can do it.
the Lassies and the Falsies. We still don't know what any of it means, but
Here we go.
they could not make it any clearer how terrifying this concept is.
Uh-oh.
And with that, that's a part. I'm going to call it here as everyone comes together and heads towards the vestige. This feels like the perfect place to end it.
The pulse Falsi. It held our future. And our fate.
And we'll see what that future and fate is in the next part.